Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling, and this is part 5 of our Heinkel He162 A-2 Salamander by Tamiya. And what we're going to be doing in this video is going to pick up with the painting. We're going to get everything painted and pre-shading and put our top coat on, and since there's different colors involved in the final look of this aircraft, we're gonna have to do a considerable amount of masking. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench and get started. So this is how we left the model in the last video. We'll get our engine on the engine stand out of the way and get ready to take care of the items that we need to attend to here, and that's mainly the masking up of our wheel wells, or bays. We'll call them the landing gear bays. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take the Tamiya masking tape here, and we're just going to kind of tuck it in around the landing gears themselves, and we're going to cover up this opening, just kind of building a wall around it that's going to protect it from overspray, so that when we start painting, we're not painting up everything that we spent all that time on in previous videos, taking care of the interior parts here for the landing gear bays. So I am building up a little area, as you can see here, that should protect it from the overspray. Now I do expect to have a little bit of cleanup to do, but yeah, that's looking pretty good. Now we're going to do the same thing with the front landing gear bay, so I will go ahead and mask that up. And then we have also the cockpit area. Now we already masked up the cockpit, or I should say the windscreen and the canopy for our cockpit in the last video. So here we're just going to take and kind of dam that whole area up too, just like we did the bays. And once we get all of our masking tape in place, I'm going to use cotton balls here. Now this is a rather large cotton ball, so I'm just going to have to pull off a piece of it there. And what this is going to do is it's going to provide extra protection from overspray. We don't want any paint to get down inside the cockpit area, which we spent a lot of time cleaning up. We do want to be careful here because we do have a joystick down inside there and some pedals, so we don't want to get that cotton really down and around those parts. We just want to kind of plug this big hole that we got. And of course we got a lot of cotton sticking out, but that's not a big deal. We'll just go ahead and cut that off. Now, I didn't realize until I did this how hard a cotton ball was to cut, but there we go. And next up, we're just going to tuck these edges in so that we don't have these little fibers flying around, possibly getting into our paint later on when we start spraying. And since our main landing gear bay is a very large void there, we're going to go ahead and use the same technique here to kind of protect everything as much as we can from any overspray, because, well, knowing me and the accidents that tend to happen when I'm working on something, I want to be as careful as I can and try to make sure that I don't get any paint down in there. And since this area is so large, I could see myself with the airbrush blowing this large cotton ball right out of there. So I'm just going to go ahead and secure it with a piece of mask tape there, and that should keep it from coming loose. So next up we have our engine nacelle here, and from our previous engine painting, we're going to want to protect these parts that we painted black here for the nozzle itself. So this is a 1mm wide Tamiya mask tape that I'm using. It's really easy to bend around gentle curves, and it's going to help us get a nice line that's going to protect that paint. And so we're going to go ahead and put this on. And I do want to come back and make sure that that edge is sealed. so that we don't get any paint bleed up underneath it or anything. It shouldn't be an issue, but it's always best to be sure. Make sure that you got good contact right there where the different colors are going to meet. So for the intake side of our nacelle, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing using the 1mm Tamiya mask tape here, just to make sure that we've got a nice clean line. And as you can see, it's much easier to manipulate this thinner masking tape. That way we can get our line nice and straight. Now with that done, I can come back in with the wider masking tape here and just place it around, making sure that we are covering up at least half of that 1mm strip. And we're just going to build up a masked area that will keep our parts from getting any overspray on them. This is really a preparatory type thing, of course. Now some people I've seen, they don't do very much masking at all, and they don't seem to have trouble with overspray, but I do. So I like to make sure that I've covered up everything I possibly can, and for some reason I still tend to get some sort of overspray or bleed through that will have to be attended to, but that's okay because that's modeling. And that's this kind of thing that you have to deal with. But you can see here that I am pinching together corners anywhere where air can push paint up onto the other pieces. Now I've gone ahead and taped up these the opened nacelle, which can be displayed on the aircraft with the engine. And we've also done the exact same thing with our wheel bay doors. So those are all ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prime everything with this, well, I'm using German Panzer Gray, but it's dark German Gray. And as you can see here, of course I didn't have you sit through all that. So it's nice and gray, and we can look at it and see if there's anything that we need to attend to before we start our pre-shading. So for our pre-shading, I'm going to be using this Anita's acrylic white paint, and I'm going to mix it up, of course, for my airbrush, because these craft paints do tend to be a little bit thick. And the method that I'm going to be using is to kind of do a center fill, but not quite a center fill, if that makes any sense. I want kind of a mottled pre-shading, but I do want to keep these panel lines dark. So I'm just going to box in these areas a little bit here, as you can see here on this engine nacelle. And then we're going to come back in and give these areas kind of a mottled appearance. And I know it looks really messy, but that's kind of what we're going for. We're going for this mottled, mottled, if I can say that right. But you get the picture here. I kind of want the clean panel lines left, but we do want these mottled surfaces. That'll give that extra detail, that extra visual effect when we lay in the overall color on top of this. So with the rest of the aircraft, I just went with the mottled kind of look, kind of an uneven, very random spray pattern. Well, it's really not a pattern if it's random. And this is going to give a lot of visual interest there, because a lot of these panels just don't have much detail on them. Now you're going to want to do this, of course, with the rest of the parts, the bay doors, and the open engine nacelle covers as well. So next up, we're going to do the belly colors. Now this is a nautical blue. It's a real light blue, but what we're going to do is we're just going to add a couple of drops of that to the paint that's kind of left over from our pre-shading, if I can think of what I wanted to say. As you can see there, it's a real light blue. We'll see how that works out when we get it on the model itself. So as I'm spraying this, and this is going to be the technique that we're going to use for all the colors, we are just going to put it on really light and cover those large areas. So we're going to paint the bottom side of the wings, the bottom side of the fuselage, and the bottom side of our horizontal stabilizers as well on the tail section, because all of these was the same color, and it's that light blue color. And it doesn't really look that light blue as we're doing it, but you got to understand that the colors are going to be a little bit different because we do have a dark primer underneath. And then, of course, we got our pre-shading, which is a white, which is going to really change kind of the dynamics of how this paint looks in the end. But I believe it's going to be fine. And here you can see kind of the effect that we're getting. And I'll just go ahead and do the rest of all this light blue. So just for comparison, you can see here on this paper towel where I wiped off my paint jar that it does look blue, pretty distinctive, especially on that white paper towel. But on the aircraft itself, it looks more of probably a light blue gray. And of course that's to be expected because we have that darker undercoat that is helping to change that pigment color. So these are the kind of things that you need to think about when you go to mix your paint or to choose what type of paints or shades of paint that you're going to use, because the undercoat really makes a difference. So next up, we need to look at our painting schematic. And here you can see right at the wing root where we have the dividing line for the upper color, which is going to be a green. And then about center of that panel, or less than center, is probably what, I'm going to call it 2/5 of the distance up that one panel, is where the line crosses. As you can see there, that dividing line is straight across the fuselage. So we need to set a point on the fuselage itself so that we can line up our masking tape. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pick out below the cockpit there that one panel line, and we have a mirrored panel line on the opposite side of the aircraft, so that gives us a point of reference. And so I've decided to I've measured it out, and it's like 4.5 millimeters, and that's where I'm going to make a pencil mark. Now we don't have to worry about that specific pencil mark. We're going to mark it on both sides, but when we take and mask, we're going to make sure that we mask just under the pencil line. Okay, so that way that's going to be painted in. So the next thing to do is to flip the model over, and we're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side in the exact same corresponding location. And we're going to measure out our 4.5 millimeters and make our pencil mark there. So now that we have our two reference points, the rear wing root and our pencil line, we're going to line up our masking tape, making sure that we are placing the masking tape just under, and that's towards the bottom of the aircraft, of our actual pencil mark, because we want to paint that. Now we need to turn to the nose of the aircraft. Now, as far as the line down the fuselage, it's just straight on out to the tail, so that's not an issue. But when it comes to around in front of the windscreen of the aircraft, it does have a curve. So I kind of played with a couple of ideas on how to do it, but I decided to do this with the 1 millimeter Tamiya mask tape, which I can get a pretty good compound curve out of. It just takes a little bit of time, and you do need some references, and I'm using the very corner of the panel at the bottom of the windshield as one of my reference marks to kind of curve up to. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to curve very carefully this little thin piece of masking tape. We want to be really sure that we're not getting any straight pull lines, that it is a nice gentle curve. And we want to continue that around the nose of the aircraft. Well, actually, probably not the nose, but you get what I mean. Up to the center of the fuselage there, just in front of the windscreen. And here comes the tricky part. We need to duplicate that down around the other side. So it takes a little bit of eyeballing and a little bit of trial and error to get a nice curve there. The most important thing is that don't let the different colors, because you can see the primer color and you can also see that light blue color, don't let that interfere with your reference points and where you need this mask to pass by. Otherwise, it's not going to be symmetrical once painted. So I'm just doing this by eye. I'm not even going to measure it. I think I can do this. So we're going to get that taken care of. Now, once we get this 1mm wide masking tape in place and we like the look of it, we'll come back in just like we did on the engine nacelle and use the wider masking tape to cover up the rest of the nose of the aircraft. That way we can protect that from overspray. Now, I think I kind of exceeded the ability of this 1mm wide tape to actually bend. So I'm just using my thumb to come back and press it down to make sure that I got really good contact there, to kind of minimize any corrections that I need to make later after I spray the aircraft. As few corrections as possible. None would be preferable, but yeah, we do want to make sure that that tape is in good contact there. So now we need to protect all of these areas that we've already painted with our light blue, and cutting out small pieces of paper towel helps fill in those gaps to cover up those areas. And we will tape all of that down into place, just making sure that we're not going over our pre-masking, which we've masked around the edges of our light blue. And we did that on a horizontal stabilizer as well. And we'll also use the paper towel to cover up the center fuselage sections. That way we're not getting any overspray there. And as you can see here, I'm staying just shy of the edge of the masking on the actual leading edge and the trailing edge of the wings, just to protect it and to make sure that the paper towel is actually secured. So now, taking a look again at our color chart, we have the wing and the nacelle, and also this portion of the horizontal stabilizer for the tail section is different than the other side of the aircraft. Now the rest of the aircraft is all in dark green, and then the nacelle and the upper wing surface is in the light green. So for light green, I'm going to use this color right here. This is a basil, and that's Anita's Craft paint. And then we have olive for our dark green, and I think that that's going to be the color that I really want to use for the dark green. So we got our light green and our dark green. I think that's probably a good color contrast for the aircraft. So that's what we're going to take and put on it. So I'll go ahead and mix these up for the airbrush, and we'll go ahead and spray the light green. Now once I get the light green on, we need to continue masking. So it's important to let these paints dry. I give them a couple of hours, and they seem to be pretty durable paints. So I'm not too worried about pulling it off with the masking tape. However, if we do pull it off, I will, I guess, be proven wrong. But I think we're going to be okay. And once again, I'm going back to my favorite paper towel here to help cover everything from the overspray, so that when we get our dark color on, that we're not interfering with the light basil color. that we use for our light green. And as you can see also on that horizontal stabilizer, I just covered that up with the Tamiya mask tape, and it should be fine there. So here I've went ahead and sprayed the olive, which is our dark green, and now we can go ahead and pull all this masking off. Everything has to go except for the cockpit area. We're going to leave the cockpit area and the windscreen masked because we do have to do some clear coating, and we definitely don't want to get any clear coat on the windscreen. So we're going to leave that in place so that that will be protected. Okay, so for this clip, I'm really sorry about the aspect ratio. I kind of messed that up, but it's not unusual for me. But as you can see here, we have all of our masks removed except for the cockpit area. And you can see that we do have a little mismatch right there that I need to straighten up. And then also, there's one right there that needs to be taken care of as well. And some little spots here and there. Not a big deal. I've had much worse results in the past, so this looks pretty good. So what we're going to be doing is just going in with our airbrush mixture, and we'll just straighten those little lines up a little bit, and it should be fine once we get it all clear coated. Okay, so we have a little bit of detail painting to do here on the fuselage, and what we're going to be doing right now is doing these top areas where the engine sets. Now, there's one little section that I'm working on here underneath the exhaust nozzle itself. Is supposed to be painted black. So the color, or I should say the paint mixture that I'm using, is the same airbrush paint that I used to paint the engine nozzles and the body of the engine as well. And if you can see here, the way I'm doing this is I'm making sure that there's not a lot of paint on the brush, and then I am coming in on the opposite side and kind of pushing the paint out towards the edge. That way I don't get an overlap of paint onto the side section of the fuselage right there where I want this black to be, just on the top. And then we can come back in and fill in the center of it. And it may require 2 coats, but 1 coat might be enough because this is pretty thin paint, so you kind of have to play with that a little bit. Sometimes you have to come in and put a second coat over it because of the thin mixture. And then I'm going to do that same exact technique on the very front where the engine nacelle is going to settle in right on top of the fuselage. Now, while we got that same paint out, it's time to go ahead and do these. I think they're radio aerials. They are a loop type antenna. So we are going to just paint just the horseshoe shaped antenna itself using that airbrush mixture, and 1 coat ought to do it, but if you see any brush strokes or anything, any bleed through from the paint underneath, then you can go ahead and put a second coat on it. But usually when you're applying a really dark paint like this over top a lighter color, you don't have problems with bleed through. It usually happens the other way around when you've got you're trying to paint a lighter color over a dark color, and at that point it's going to take multiple coats sometimes to kind of cover that up. And of course, since we have 2 different display options, one with the engine covers open and one with them closed on the nacelle, we have a second antenna that we have to paint up as well. And so we're going to do the exact same thing here and paint up that antenna in black. Now, I'm not painting the mounting, as you can see here, just the actual horseshoe shaped antenna. And as you can see there, that's the result that we get. Okay, so next up, we're going to take a look at our 20mm autocannons. I think it's what they are. And as you can see, the ends of the barrels there have no detail. So we're going to put a little bit on it by first of all flattening the surface a little bit. It's nice to have a good square surface to work from. And a couple of passes here with a 400 grit sanding stick works wonders for us and kind of gives us a nice flat area to work with. And then I'm going to come in with my hobby knife, a nice sharp straight blade, and I'm going to go right into the center of it there, and we're going to make us a little starting point so that we can actually drill these out, because it's always nice to have a little hole in the end of your gun barrel. Otherwise there's nowhere for your bullets to come out of. So once we get this marked in the center, and you do need to pay close attention and try to get that as close to center as possible. Then we can come in with a very small drill bit. Now this particular one is a 0.3 millimeter, and I'm just going to go drill the end of this a little bit there, and we're going to check it for center, because you can actually angle your drill bit a little bit if you're not in the center, but here we got lucky and we're in good shape. And then I switched drill bits because the 0.3 wasn't big enough, so I went to 0.4. So that's just under a ½ millimeter. And I'm just going to drill this out so that we can have a nice little detail there on the end of the gun barrel or auto cannon barrel. And as you can see, there we go. And that actually looks really good. I really like how that has come out. And as you can see here, we'll just put it up against the other one so that you can see the difference there. Now you will notice that I did leave these on a sprue section so that I wasn't losing the actual gun barrels, and it's much easier to handle this way if you're doing any modifications. Okay, so next up we're going to clear coat everything in a gloss clear, and this is Tamiya X22 clear, and it is thinned with the X20A thinner. And that's going to prepare the surface of the aircraft for our panel liner, which is going to come next, and also our decals, which are very important because our decals and our markings and everything is what is up next. So that'll have to wrap it up for this video, but I'm really starting to kind of dig how this aircraft is starting to look. It looks really good. I like how the pre-shading has come through on it. Now we've got the gloss coat on there, so it's going to be shiny until we get our decals on and get our final flat clear coat on top of it. But as you can see, it really brings out those greens, and yeah, it looks pretty good. I kind of like it. So let me know in the comments how you think this build is going so far. And special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I continue to put these videos together and put them out there for you to enjoy. And if you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope maybe today that I did earn that subscription. And that would be greatly appreciated if you guys give me a like if you like the video. So until next time, guys, stay safe.